I guess I was kind of prepared to struggle, and I kind of expected it to some extent. It doesn't make it easy, but I think it makes it, by adjusting your expectations. I think that's, where we suffer, obviously, is not in the things that happen to us. It's in how we view the things that happen to us. So, it's not, you're only, uh, so you're only having a dark day if you are thinking you shouldn't be having a struggle.
But right now, I thought it'd be awesome for you to just tell us a little bit about your story. What inspired you to love music and to pursue a career in music, and you've lasted a long time in a career where folks come and go overnight. And so, what did you learn along the way that's helped you continue to connect with people and build relationships and turn this into a long career?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here, even though it's early. That's how much I love you guys to make it happen this early. But actually, it's not. I do get up a little earlier these days. Well, basically, my name is Tony DeSare. I'm from upstate New York. I was born in a small town up there, and I always loved music, but did not have that on the radar as something that I would do and pursue as a career. Really all through my teen years, even. I started on violin because it was the first instrument I could take in school, but I was always fascinated with pianos and piano players, but we did not have a piano in the house. So I begged my parents for, it seems like years, but it was probably months, for a piano or a keyboard. So they got me one of those little Casio keyboards from Radio Shack, and I just played it all the time. And then I got a bigger keyboard in piano lessons when I was about 10. And then, but I was always a big nerd in school, and I just kind of always thought of music as just something that I'd love to do, and hadn't planned on, even when I was a junior in high school and was really getting more involved in music, my plans were to go to school for pre-med, maybe pre-optometry. I didn't know for sure. So I went to Ithaca College in Central New York State, which had a really great music program, but it also had a variety of other good programs, and had a pre-optometry program. So that's actually what I went to school for, and in the beginning. But I was able to get into the jazz band there because it was open audition, even though, I was only the only non-music major in the jazz band. But I learned a lot during that time there, and there came a point. Billy Joel came to Cornell, which was just on the other hill, and I went to go see his. It was like a 3-hour question and answer thing where he just talked about music and he played some songs, and I was, at the time, I knew that I loved music, and I'd been gigging around. Whenever I was home from breaks, in my hometown, I'd play at hotels and bars, and I was getting pretty well known. And then even on the college campus, I started to get a following. So I was starting to really consider maybe not even pursuing my major at all. Just in it. So Billy Joel was asked the question about how could he ever recommend to somebody to go into the music business when the odds of success are so small. And which is kind of what I always thought. Like, I didn't know anybody that had a successful career in music. Everyone that I knew from upstate New York pretty much struggled. So it didn't seem like an option for me. But Billy Joel's answer changed my mind. And it was that to be successful in music, you don't have to be me. You just have to play music and pay your bills. And if you love playing music, that's enough. And I thought he was absolutely correct in that. And from that moment, I got out of pre-med. I switched to business management so I could have more time to focus. I decided I didn't want to have a degree in music at that point because I would have to stay longer. So I had 2 more years of school, and I moved to New York City after that, and I started with no prospects, not knowing anybody, and that's how I thought I'd give it a shot and try it for a while. And I knew that I had this degree, and I did well in school. All my professors thought I was crazy because at the time, this was in the late '90s, everyone that I went to school with in the business school had a job going out of school. They had interviews on campus, and I was second in my class at the college business school. So my professors really thought I was nuts for not at least taking like an investment banking job or something like that. But I said no, because if I have that, how am I going to ever, if I take a job that starts at like 75,000 a year, how am I ever going to get to the point where I feel like I can quit that? So I said it's better that I make essentially nothing to to start. So it was tough in the first. I mean, the whole first 5 years of it was a struggle after I graduated college. But within 3 months, I had a job 5 nights a week at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square, which at the time I thought when I first got that gig, I thought I'd made it because I was going to Times Square. I mean, I'm from upstate New York. I was playing in Times Square 5 nights a week, and it was hard, but it was good that I was playing music every night. I mean, I was exhausted so much that I couldn't really focus on other music pursuits because it was just 4 hours a night, just relentless. But I ended up from that getting an off-Broadway understudy role in a show about Frank Sinatra. I started playing around town, started hanging out at the Friars Club, the legendary Friars Club where they had the most people know them from the roasts that they'd have on TV, the Dean Martin roasts. And I started to meet people. And then I got a record deal in 2005, and I put out 3 albums on this large independent jazz label, which allowed me to tour all over the country, all over the world. I started doing little performing arts centers, and then I started working with orchestras, major symphony orchestras, about 10 years ago. And that's become mostly what I have done until March of last year, when my full slate, my busiest year ever, was all of a sudden completely canceled. And I started, I felt a little bit like I did back when I first started after college, in that I didn't know exactly what I was going to do to make money, because I went from having a really good, healthy income to having nothing. But I mean, then there was some other things that I had wanted to work on. So I always wanted to record a song a day. So I started recording a song a day, making videos. I scored a film this fall, a Lifetime Christmas movie. And I've always loved audio engineering, and like video has always been something that I've, pursued. But in the last year, I've really, spent part of every day when I make these videos, getting better at all those things. So now I basically have a television studio in my house, and a full post-production audio and engineering suite. And I'm actually having a better time than ever, in this crazy time. So, I mean, that's kind of like a really broad kind of overlook of how I got to, this point today, and it's 2021. But there were a lot of ups and downs along the way, but mostly, there was always something, even in the times when I thought, when I really doubted whether I could carry on, there was always something that came along to keep me going. I remember when I was about 25, I was in New York City. The off-Broadway show I was in had closed. The piano bar I was playing in had kind of a hostile takeover by it was run by the Chicago Mafia, and then the New York Mafia kind of shut it down. So I was out of that job, and their checks, and they had been writing me checks that kept bouncing. So I was, at a point where I almost thought I was going to have to actually get a resume and get a job. But I had a gig where they paid me $20 and and it didn't even cover my parking. That was kind of the low point, and I thought that was it. But then I met Joe Piscopo around that time, that started to take me around. I don't know, just things have always revealed themselves at a moment, like some opportunity that kept me going. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I would love to be of assistance to who's on the call, if my experience could help anyone. You know, if you want, Randall, you could direct me in a way that I could be of, you know, most use.
Yeah, if you've got questions, type in the chat and we'll get you unmuted. You know, your story is really about more than music. That's a really cool story about life and courage and perseverance. And we've probably all known people or even been in the situation ourselves where we have something we've always dreamed about doing, but we want the safe route too. So we want to stay in the boat, but just dip our
Yeah.
toes in. You closed the door to the safe route and said,
Well,
I'm not going to take the safe route. I'm going to go chase the dream. You were all in on it. You know, what was that thought process like to just develop the courage to be able to say, I'm going to go do it?
well, I think I'm all for taking calculated risks, right? So if I really was bold, I would have done what my friend in college did. Now, I went to college with Gavin DeGraw, who ended up becoming a big pop star, actually. And I remember having the conversation with him my sophomore year of college in the dining hall, where he said, I'm quitting. I'm just going to move to New York now." And that, I thought, was really bold, because I, even when I knew that I wanted, you know, it was by my end of my sophomore year, I decided I wanted to try uh, moving to New York and play music. But I was like, well, I've already, you know, I'm going to owe student loans anyway, and I don't have my degree. So I ended up staying in college, and I got a degree not in music, because I wanted to have something that I could, I don't want to say fall back on, but I wanted more options if I needed it. So for me, it's always been calculated risk. So it's like, I thought, well, I could move there, and if there's 100 other guys like me that are better than I am, even, then I can just get a job, and, you know, that'll be fine. So, but yeah, I mean, it was kind of a surprise to some people, I guess, because I had been such kind of like a focused student, that I would just all, you know, especially my professors, who at the time really didn't realize the music aspect of my life, when they, you know, when they approached me to interview for jobs, and, you know, I was just like not interested. I remember thinking, am I doing the right thing? Because they definitely thought I was not. So, um, uh, but I think the thing is, you know, I really, when you love something like music, and it really calls to you, and you know, I think it became imperative for me to give it a shot, so I would know if it is, so I know for myself if I could make it work or not. And that's really what it is. Like in any of this stuff, there's no, like, you know, there's no laid out path. There's no manual of, first you do this, first you know, the whole arts career and music career is full of all these chicken or the egg scenarios. Like you can't get a record deal till you get a manager. And this is back in the day. Now it works differently, but back then it's like, if you're going to have a record deal, you need a manager. But if you don't have a manager, you can't get a record deal. And, you know, you can't get a booking agent unless you have you know, it's like all these things. It's like you can't get any one of them without having the other. So that was the, you know, especially the way the old business worked. Now it's a little more uh, democratized, I'd say. And that, but now it's a question of like, everybody's in, you know, all the musicians in the world are all in the same room playing at the same time. It's like, you know, you know, Mike will relate to this. It's like being at the NAMM show trying to be heard, you know, at the, you know, with everybody playing and singing all at once. So it's a different type of challenge now. Um, but yeah, I think that if there's something that you're really passionate about. And then, but also we as humans are notoriously bad at evaluating our own talent. So there's that thing about like, okay, I like it, will other people like it enough where they'll pay me to do it? That's the question you got to find out.
Let's go to Marilyn.
There, I'm unmuted. Well, first of all, Tony, I just want to give you kudos for what you've done, because I know it wasn't easy. So a couple questions I have. Okay, the first one is, how did you had to have dark days. How did you pull yourself up? Because, we have to motivate ourselves. How did you pull yourself up on those dark days? And the second question I have, how did you network? I mean, Joe Piscopo just doesn't walk up to you on the street and say, "Hi, Tony, I'm Joe Piscopo," right? So you had to do something to put yourself in position to meet the people that you needed to meet. So, sorry, Randy, that's two questions, but
Okay.
but those are my questions this morning.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, thanks. As far as the dark days go, yeah, it's, I think I had the benefit of youth in that point in time, that just kind of like, I also didn't grow up with, my parents were very, solid middle class, work 9 to 5. It's like I didn't have like a lifestyle that I got used to that I had to support, if that makes any sense, which I think a lot of kids do. Certainly kids I went to college with, they drove they had a car, things like that, that their parents got for them. So already I kind of was used to being scrappy. I when I was in college, I worked, I'd play gigs over the summer, and I'd save $3,000 and live off that $3,000 for the whole entire next year. So as far as, when I was at that point, especially in my mid 20s, it didn't bother me at the time. It would certainly bother me now to just have, a negative balance in my checking account, and, just kind of this feeling of not knowing when my next gig was. That would all freak me out now. But because I guess I was kind of prepared to struggle, and I kind of expected it to some extent. It doesn't make it easy, but I think it makes it, by adjusting your expectations. I think that's, where we suffer, obviously, is not in the things that happen to us. It's in how we view the things that happen to us. So, it's not, you're only, so you're only having a dark day if you are thinking you shouldn't be having a struggle. So that's kind of how I felt about it. And then, as far as putting myself in in the right place for the opportunities. I mean, that's why I moved to New York City. I mean, it was very, I'm from farm country, so it was I didn't know how I'd function in New York. So I just did it. And, then you have to survive. But that's where the business was. I mean, and to some extent still is, but especially then, for what I was doing, I had to be in New York. So, and then I just followed every opportunity that I could and just did my best. I mean, and there are certain things that I look back on that if I wasn't there that night at a certain thing, it's like, I don't know if this whole life would have happened, but I mean, that applies for everyone. But in the case of Joe Piscopo, so I was playing of this piano bar, Jilly's Piano Bar, and when they had their big opening, they had their celebrity friends. So it was like they had opening night, which, and at the time, the Sopranos was a huge HBO show, and the whole cast came in, and I played the opening night. So it was the whole cast of Sopranos, and Joe Piscopo, Dan Aykroyd. It's so long ago now, I'm trying to think who else was there. But I mean, it's this very small place. I mean, it was probably 800 square feet. And the piano was the center of the, there was the bar and there's the piano. So everyone heard me that night. And Joe came up to me and said, how he loves Sinatra and all that stuff. And, he sang with me. And I played for him. So he started to hire me to play his shows. And we just, he was he felt like very fatherly towards me. And then, anytime he could invite me to something or get me out something, he would. And that's how I started to meet, kind of the people that were more influential in the business. Like he'd be like, hey, Tony, I'm going to a party at I'm at Erdogan's apartment. I'm at Erdogan, founder of Atlantic Records. And, so then I would, and not that things come directly from that, other than it just starts to put me in different circles. So all through my life, I found though that if I too aggressively tried to pursue connections, it just wasn't organic to me and didn't work. I just had to, show up and follow up, but not, it didn't really help to try to like beat down anybody's door, at least in my experience. Does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you.
Let's go to Billy.
Hey Tony, great story. And my question is, did you find that having your degree, earning your degree, in any way has helped you with where you're at today? And then if you were doing it over again, would you still have went down that path?
Thanks, Billy. That's actually a good question. I've thought of that. I'd like to think, especially for those first several years, I had to write a student loan payment every month, that the actual education was helpful. I mean, I think what it really did for me, it just gave me a really better understanding of how the world works at large, especially, I don't think I would have an understanding of financial markets and all that stuff unless I had to study it, and accounting. I mean, I did my own taxes for years, so there were benefits like that. And also just, I think the experience of going to college and being on my own in this kind of protective environment helped give me the confidence to think I could move to New York City on my own. But if I had it to do over again, I don't know, like if I was advising my 17-year-old self, I think I would have had a long talk with myself and probably said, just you can do it. Just go now, because and among other things, we all would have told ourselves, our younger selves. But I think if I did have it to do over again, knowing, but then again, it's like if I did do it over again, maybe I would have got sidetracked by something else, so I don't want to second guess. But those years between 18 and 22, I really could have been working on my music and my brand much more than learning how to read an annual report. So but yeah, I mean, and I certainly am glad that I did it, and I'm proud to have had that time there, and I made a lot of important relationships there, and I did learn a lot about music, because I took big band arranging, I took theory, because I have very little formal musical training too. That's the other thing that was kind of like has sometimes been a hindrance, but also an asset, because I don't necessarily. I think when you go to music school, there's a tendency to kind of there's this kind of conformity in it that kind of doesn't create the kind of asymmetrical thinking that you need to be your own company, your own entrepreneur, which is basically what you have to figure out. I mean, a lot of people can play piano, a lot of people can, it's finding a way to turn it into something that adds value to people's lives and also enriches your own. I mean, that's the trick. It's not there's plenty of people that play piano better than I do, and think, it's just about creating something that no one else can quite replicate, and finding a way to make your own, finding your niche. So yeah, so it's, I think that pretty much answers your question, I hope.
Let's go to Lisa.
Sorry, I was trying to hit my unmute button. So I've really enjoyed I really enjoyed your story, Tony, and you said a lot of impactful things. And one in particular that really hit me was, adjusting your expectations. That's what I found difficult to do, because I found myself at first being, really disappointed in my team. And, my question would be to you, because you really kind of answered it in answering the first question, but then how did you really identify, I guess, what was realistic in changing your expectations while still promoting motivation for yourself and maybe for others?
You mean, how did I kind of set the standards of what would be? Yeah, let me. I didn't. There wasn't a lot of like intense reflection on that. I think it was just a lot of it, just intuition. This kind of intuition that, okay, this didn't work out, I don't have gigs, but I believe that there's still a lot of potential there. It's kind of like believe. It's kind of having this belief in yourself, and that, despite all tangible evidence, to the contrary, that what I was doing hadn't quite fully matured yet, and also hadn't quite fully been realized yet and communicated yet to people. So it's like, if I felt like, I had put myself out there in a way that I thought was the best I could be, and it wasn't working out, then I think I would have said, okay, this is the time, that I need to reflect and say, maybe this is not going to be a life that's fun for me, because just to constantly not have things work out. I remember a peer of mine that was in the Broadway and cabaret scene years ago. Back then, one of the big gigs to get in New York City was to play the Oak Room at the Algonquin Hotel, which is where Dorothy Parker used to hang out, the Round Table and all that. And they had this sophisticated cabaret there. And back then, back in the early 2000s, when you had a gig there, they'd have a big launch, and all the press would come. I mean, on my debuts there, I'd have the New York Times and Rex Reed from the Observer, and Will Friedwald from the Village Voice, and USA Today. I mean, it was like there would be cameras there. I mean, it was a big, that's gone now, but it used to be a big deal. So my friend had his shot at that, and he told me, and he did it, and he got terrible reviews. The New York Times just eviscerated him, unfortunately. And I spoke to him about it a while later, and he said that he put on what he thought was the best show of his life that night. And that was a moment for him where I think, after that he moved to Boston, and I think he became like a realtor or something, because he came to that point where he realized that the dream that he envisioned for himself wasn't realistic, because he knew that he couldn't do something better than that, or he didn't want to do something different to accommodate what he thought they wanted. So anyway, that's kind of, the barometer, I think, knowing, kind of having this sense of if you've been understood or not. And if you have been understood and it's still not working out, I think that's the moment that you reevaluate and think about going on monster.com.
Thank you for sharing that. That's great feedback and insight.
Thanks.
Go to Steve.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Steve.
Love your passions and love your story of resilience and commitment. I work with business leaders and folks like Randy Powell. So, and Randy's actually a good example of as a lead into my question. Randy's actually an accountant, and I think you're a CPA originally, Randy, but he had the skills and the chutzpah to become president of a large organization. And in that role, you have to orchestrate a lot of things to sort of make the music in an organization. If I can analogize it that way. So I'm kind of curious. In fact, I would also say it's sort of like a orchestra conductor. So you're a conductor of your own talent, and you're sitting in your studio. Talk about a little bit about all the things you have to organize and coordinate. You've got equipment, you've got your voice, you got the piano and the video to convert noise into music.
Yeah, well, and this reminds me of something that when I do master classes for students, especially college students, that I found that's helped me and actually has been key to my success, in that, I've always been somebody that's interested in a lot of things. So, I mentioned in school, I was a big nerd. So, I loved computers from an early age. So when I was a teenager learning piano, I was also learning, I had a drum machine and a sequencer, and then I started singing. So the thing is, for me, what I enjoy most about where I've arrived at this point, I'm 45 years old now. So what I've enjoyed so much about making it to this point is all these things that I've loved. I mean, for example, I loved films and film music, technology. I've been able to create this life where I do all these things that I love to do. Basically, it's like all the things that I loved when I was 11 years old, I'm doing at a higher level now. So, it's all about, and I tell students this, it's all about skill sets, especially for someone like me. I mean, if you're someone that's like, I don't know, like an Adele, the big pop star who just has this amazing once in a generation voice, then maybe that's all you need. But for me, it's been a lifetime of, now I've been working on these skill sets for 30 years, and they finally matured. Things have taken a while for me to feel like to hit kind of mastery of these things. So I mean, I started with the kind of learning audio and mixing and engineering, back in my teens. But now I'm at a point where I record and mix my own albums. So I'm always keeping up on that. I'm always watching YouTube videos. I'm always aware of the technology. I get to practice it every day with the videos I make, because I've made 200. I'm probably going to make a video today. It'll be my 203rd video since March that I make here in my studio. So yeah, I mean, there's the skill sets as for an independent musician, looking at it as running my own company. I can't pay other people to, like, I mean, I can't pay somebody to shoot the video and then edit the audio and, and put it out. It's like, those are all things that I have to do myself in order to make it financially viable. So there is all these different hats that I have to wear every day. I mean, if I'll just show you my studio here a little bit, so you can just get an idea of what have to deal with, and I've been able to build this. So I sit here every day and do my video. That's what people see. But I've just got all this equipment, these 4K cameras that you can shoot a independent film on. So what that means is I got to record this footage every day. Then I have to color correct it and edit it in Adobe Premiere, lighting. So there was a point about 10 years ago where I studied how to light, so 3-point lighting and hair lights and key lights. So all that stuff, now it's like just kind of intuitive to me. But and then miking the piano, like how to set all this stuff up. I mean, it's like it just goes on and on. But it's taken me a long time. So I mean, it's not anything extraordinary that I was able to do it, because I just every single day I work on this stuff, that I can. And then there's, before I had time to really focus on this all the time, it was about just being a good live performer, which didn't come naturally to me because I'm naturally kind of introverted person. But I've developed a skill set over the years to entertain any size audience. I don't care if it's 5 people, we'll have a great time, or if it's 5,000 people. I mean, I've played to up to like 150,000 people. I did the July 4th Philadelphia a couple of years ago, and it was just now for me, after all this time, it doesn't change the way it doesn't change really my level of nervousness, for example. But all that stuff, all these skills have been hard won, and a lot of kind of learning and small steps. But over time, it's like that's the thing that I've learned, especially about myself, is that it just it's like you have to be patient and be okay with the delayed gratification.
I think Harry and I are both intrigued by this hair lighting, and maybe after this is over, we can get some tips, because we've struggled in that area.
Well, it could also be head lighting.
Let's go to Angie.
Hi, good morning, Tony.
Hi,
my question was, you talked about taking the risk of not utilizing your degree and finding a career like all your friends were doing. What was your biggest lesson learned through all of that?
Well, I think in retrospect, the biggest lesson was that my intuition was correct, because I feel like a lot of my peers that I knew in college that were, say, getting a education degree to be able to teach music as a fallback plan. I mean, at least half the people that I went to music school wanted a career in music where they were performing on music. And when now all these years later, I can only on one hand name the people that actually were able to pull that off. So I think, but a lot of it has to do with, you have to be uncomfortable, I think, in order to achieve anything that's kind of like outside the norm or outside the average. Like it takes kind of daily discomfort to try to keep moving beyond what your perceived boundaries are. So if I had gotten a job, say I was a music major and I got a job teaching high school band, that takes up so much of your creativity, time, and energy that realistically, where does the moment come realistically where you say, okay, I'm going to quit my high school band job and just do music now? It didn't seem like there would be that moment, because it's not clear, because there's so much discomfort for years involved. For me, it was, about, I was 22 when I moved to New York, and I got my record deal when I was 29. And even that was just the beginning. But those years in between, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time to kind of not sure if it's going to be working out. So so I think that that's just the only choice you kind of have. You have to put yourself out there and be in a state of every morning kind of waking up saying, like, what am, kind of feeling like, what am I doing? And so, and taking joy in the successes that you have and learning, as much as you can without being completely, disheartened by things that don't work out. But also, tempering that with being realistic. Whereas, like, if nobody is liking what I'm doing and I'm not seeing people excited about it at all, then, then I'd really have to stop and think about it. I mean, because there were times, that I tried to do something outside of the genre that I'm best at. I was encouraged by people to do more like the pop radio and stuff that was popular at the time, and I could tell it just didn't move people. When in a job like this, it's like when you have an audience, the audience, and Tony Bennett has said this too. His greatest teacher in his whole life has been his audience, and I totally understand that, because that's an audience of strangers, not your mom and dad and your best friends. An audience of strangers will give you an honest read on how you're doing. So, and that always worked for me, even if it didn't, even though I've refined it and got better at it. Like, that's really what always gave me, anytime I was able to have people listen, which is the other thing too. I mean, when you're playing at a hotel bar and everybody's talking, they're not, part of the whole challenge of the first several years of doing this was just having people, just be quiet and give me a chance, because that's, once the room quiets down and people become an audience, then you have the opportunity to work and practice. But until then, you don't. Then you're just background music, and you don't know if what you're doing works. So there's all these little things that I was aware of that, I was working just to get people to pay attention. And then once people paid attention and I saw that it worked, I just kept going on that and trying to make it better.
Cool.
Mike brought up a story about a time you're playing and Paul McCartney walks in. So how do you prepare yourself to be ready for those big moments and not clam up, get nervous, whatever?
Yeah, well, that I certainly wasn't prepared for that. It was more like a weird dream. It's like you have this, it's one of those stories. It's like, oh, because there's a gig that I did every week. I played at the Carlisle Hotel in New York City for years, every Sunday night with my trio. And then one of the nights just happened, Paul McCartney just happened to come in and watch my entire show. So, but I think in those moments, I mean, I certainly was nervous, and but that's also the time to rely on kind of the years of experience that I have, just performing when I'm nervous, or so. And it was exciting. Everyone was excited about it, and it wasn't like he was evaluating me for anything, like whether I was gonna. It's actually more. It's worse to have like an opening night and have Stephen Holden from the New York Times sitting 4 feet from you, with a poker face, writing little notes after you say something. That's much more, because in those cabaret rooms, I mean, there'd be like, I don't know, 50, 60 people is like a decent audience in one of those things. So, and then you have the New York Times reporter literally just right in front of you. Those are more nerve-wracking. But then again, it's like, in those moments, it's like, well, this is what it is. This is what the job is. If you can't perform when you're nervous, then that's a big problem. And that's why I think that's, it's not really an excuse to be like, oh, I didn't perform well because I was nervous. It's like, well, that's part of the skill set that you need. So, I mean, it does affect things, you know, you get the adrenaline going, it dries out your voice and things like that. But yeah, so when something unexpectedly big happens, it's just important to be aware of the difference between the thoughts you're having in your mind and the reality of just, you know, music requires you to be present. So it's always important to be reminding yourself, if you know, because while I'm playing, sometimes I'll be in the middle of a song and my thinking mind will be going way too much. I mean, I'll be thinking about whatever. So it's good to, in those moments, just remind myself that I don't need to think about anything. I just need to sing and play piano. And the more I allow that to happen, then the less I'm thinking thoughts, judging what's going on, the better off I'll be.
Let's go to Frank.
Tony, thanks for investing time with us today. I'm really curious, what opinions matter the most to you? Fans, peers, people like the reporter from the New York Times. Critics have always been, it's kind of funny to me how a lot of critics, especially in your business, have never been entertainers, but they're critics, right? So I'm just curious, who impacts you the most? Whose opinion matters the most?
You know, it's changed over the years. At first, you know, especially when I was first starting out and having my, you know, my first albums coming out, and like the Review and Downbeat and Jazz, like all those magazines, and then the New York Times, that mattered a lot to me, because back then a bad review could kind of kill your career, you know, especially early on. So there was that anxiety about that, I guess. And for the New York Times, I had, what I learned from years of doing it, though, is that, I mean, because now I've been at it for a long time, and I've gotten a great rave review from the New York Times. I got a complete terrible review from the New York Times, and overall my life didn't change. And these days, everyone's a critic now. So, you know, you just put anything out on the internet, and you have, you know, the more popular it is, the more opinions you have about it. And the more people love something, the larger amount of people that hate it come up. I mean, think about these, you know, I don't know that I'd want to be a huge household name artist these days, because it's like you deal with yes, you get the adulation from people and all that, but you have an unprecedented amount of people that just, you know, are trying to take you down in a lot of ways. So I like the fact that I'm kind of fairly I mean, very rarely am I ever recognized in public, but yet I've got this group of people, and I'm in this industry that's got this niche following where I'm somewhat well known in it. So it's a nice balance of feeling like I'm acknowledged, but also that it doesn't get to the point where it really it affects my life in a negative way. So as far as, I don't know that I really care what people think so much anymore, other than what my own taste. You know, I'm always trying to live up to my own taste, and that's the frustrating part to me, because I always want to sing better than I do and play piano better than I do, and like have my video color look better. And I'm always like, you know, I'll see it on somebody else's screen. I'll be like, oh, that's too blue, or it's too orange. So it's my own inner kind of barometer of taste that is my biggest driver now. And there's very a few times where I look at something I've done and been like, oh yeah, that's perfect, that's great. It's usually like, oh, I can make this better this way. But also it's been important in this journey of, you know, a couple decades I've been doing it, to understand that my music and what I do, and even the songs that I write, are separate from who I am. So that's an important, for my own mental health, distinction to make, that I'm not my career. I'm not my music. If somebody doesn't like the sound of my voice or something, it's not, it's not me. It's just this thing that I've worked on that is highly subjective, and I've learned just from, from too many times doing concerts where one person's favorite song is the other person's least favorite song in the show. So it's like, I can't drive myself crazy with stuff like that.
No, very, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Marcus, you have a question about books?
Unfortunately, I'm the book geek. I think I've asked this on everyone. I think everybody kind of is. For whatever reason, that it's kind of the thing I'm drawn to. What books did you read, or have you read, or what author do you read that just says, hey, sometimes I think we all need something to just kind of kick us in the butt. For me, it was John Gordon's Energy Bus and Carpenter books that just one day made me go, oh, hey, you're being a jerk at work and you need to learn to be a leader without a title. So what is it that possibly helped you?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And, I wouldn't say, I'm somewhat ashamed to say that I'm not an avid book reader. I read all the time, but I tend to read, especially in the last 10 years since these aggregated kind of news sites have come together, like Flipboard, where it's got, where it focuses a lot on science, and, where you can pick what it focuses on. So there's not only news, but, it could be entrepreneurship and biology, and so these things. So I'm always, especially when I'm on the road, that's all I do. I mean, I'll spend all day in my hotel room, mostly just kind of reading those types of things. But I mean, and then when I was in school, I had, I read a lot of, the things that you just have to read while you're doing it, and and I've enjoyed books along the way. There's nothing that particularly stands out book-wise that's life-changing. I mean, I'm more affected by other kind of expressive art forms. Music and film, I would say, have been more influential. Like like a really good film, even if it's not containing music, will make me want to come home and write something. Or and obviously other musical artists inspire me. And there's certainly a lot of wisdom that I gleaned from books. I mean, it's even old books like Tao Te Ching or something like that. But there's nothing like, I haven't really read a lot of kind of business leadership, other than like, 7 Habits, those types of books. But or like the Malcolm Gladwell. I remember, liking a few of those a long time ago. But yeah, I don't really have anything specific, to and as far as like an author of a book that's really kind of changed my life.
Well, what movie have you watched lately that got your creative juices going?
Let's see. It's funny, since this whole pandemic began, I don't really find myself spending a lot of time watching movies as much, because it's my part. Well, and here's the other thing that really changes the level of movies that you watch when you have a child in the house. I have a 7-year-old son, so it's like when you pick a movie, it's like, I'm just happy if I tolerate it a lot of times. But I mean, the most recent thing that I watched, that's not necessarily a movie, but it's just kind of, this new kind of art form of this mini series type thing. The Queen's Gambit on Netflix was just so beautifully done. The music was great. the cinematography, the act, I mean, like everything that I found to be really inspiring. And, you know, kind of whenever something kind of reminds you of the potential of an art form to kind of transcend what's normally done, makes me want to do that myself. So yeah, I would say that's the most recent thing that really just kind of blew me away, as far as just being so, like, you could tell whoever was involved in that wasn't doing it for the paycheck, you know?
I'm getting a lot of questions coming here. We probably won't get to all of them, but here's one, and we didn't plan this, so if you're not ready, but is there anything you can sing this morning?
Oh, well,
3 songs.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, over the iPhone, it's like not great sound, but I don't know. I mean, I mean, that is what I do. But what song? I don't even know.
You can pick your favorite.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite. I could sing a few measures just to, you know, let people know that haven't heard me sing. And by the way, anybody that hasn't been aware of me, I do have now like over 300 videos on YouTube, 200 of which I've made since March. And I just come down here and, you know, I took a trip on a train and I thought about you. I passed the shadowy lane and I thought about you. 2 or 3 cars parked under the stars, a winding stream. Moon shining down on some little town, with each beam, same old dream. At every stop that we made, oh, I thought about you. And as I pulled down the shade, I really felt blue. I peeked through the crack and looked at that track, the one going back to you. And what did I do? I thought about you. Just a little bit.
Yeah, that was awesome. Steve wants to know how you remember all the words to all these songs.
Yeah, well, that's just something that, I don't know, thankfully it's just something that I've had the ability to do, which is helpful with what I do, because there's so many songs in the genre, and there's oftentimes, you know, I also do so many different types of programs where I'll do one program with an orchestra, and then maybe I only do that once every couple of years, even a certain song. And I don't know, I just remember, I just have thankfully so far, pretty much the ability to recall lyrics and songs, even if I haven't played them. Sometimes in 20 years, you know, it'll come up that I have to play a song that I haven't played since my piano bar days, and somehow it's still in there.
I got a private message here. You'll probably guess from who. Can you play Kiss by Prince?
Oh. Well, I'd rather focus on any other questions that are pertinent, because there's certainly plenty of my music available, you know, that with better audio. Because, you know, one of the things that drives me crazy is the audio over Zoom. So, I mean, I'm happy to sing, but I think
I was curious, you
offer
talked about how much you have to do on your own. Are there things you look at and you say, I am going to just outsource that because I can't do that thing myself?
Yeah. Anything that's like graphic design or visual art oriented, you know, sometimes I do it because I have to, but it's something that I just don't have the talent to, or really the drive to get better at it either. So, because I actually love all the audio stuff, and, you know, and I'll show you my post room actually too, because this is so all this stuff. I mean, I built my own computers, and, you know, all this stuff I maintain myself. and it's really fun for me. So even though it can be frustrating, but here's the computer that drives my studio, which I built a few years ago. It's silent, so it can be in the room and it doesn't have, you know, a lot of fan noise. And then my rack of everything, you know, that's plugged in from the other room, and then I've got 4 monitors here that I use when I score movies. My keyboard controller. This is the laptop that I used to make sheet music, like scores, you know, for my orchestra arrangements. And then that controls like the samples, like when I'm performing in strings, and, you know, it gives the expression dynamics, and, you know, mic pre's, like, I love this stuff, so I don't mind spending time figuring out how that stuff works. But when it comes to art and things like that, and making a flyer for one of my shows or something, it's like I can't stand it.
How do you focus on the revenue streams as a musician, you know, between royalties, movie scores, YouTube, you know, how do you manage just the music, the money side of your career?
Well, I just, you know, it's just trying to do as much. You know, one of the disadvantages of being on the road so much was that I didn't have time to really work on other streams as much as I wanted. So that's one of the things that I've done in the last year. And basically, it's just, you know, following through with the opportunities. I mean, I'd love to have more royalties that, you know, that aren't, you know, that don't involve having to do a live show. So it's just, but you know, you can only do that when there's the opportunity. So, you know, I've done a couple ads, you know, and those, and I can see why people do those, because they do, you know, I did like 20 minutes of work, and I got checks for 2 years. And it's basically just trying to do as much as I can, and try to keep it. The goal for me at this point is to, like, I don't really care about making tons more money or anything. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing, you know, the most that I can. So, like, you know, for example, the ad work, I don't really love that, so I don't pursue it. If it comes up, I'll do it. But I love you know, working on what I want to work on, and choosing the songs that I want to sing. So if I can continue to do that and make enough money doing that, that's what you know, that's what I'll focus on. And I love film music, so when I get the opportunity to score a film, I love doing that. As hard as it is, and every film that I've scored 4 films. About 2/3 of the way through each one, I feel like this is the one that's gonna put me under, but I'm not gonna be able to finish it on time, and, you know, I'm running out of ideas. But I don't know. It's a journey where, you know, there's no routine necessarily. It's just kind of like every day is different, and I love that. And there's always so many different skills to work on, and things to try to become just, you know, just furthering toward a level of mastery that I have, and a goal in my head to do. So
Let's get a question in from Andre, and then we'll wrap up here.
I always like going last. That's why I can close the show down, man. So, Tony, awesome. I was listening in as I was doing some other things, and, you know, you mentioned Queen's Gambit. I just recently finished that, and I think what struck me about that docu-series is oftentimes when we see someone that's had success in life, we think they just woke up and success happened, right? And so we don't often learn about what it took to get there. And I think Queen's Gambit is sort of indicative of that. So how much time are you spending working with musicians, sharing your story and the struggle? Because, you know, we see TV and we see folks that perform, right? And it's like, hey, they just woke up and started playing a guitar, and now they've got like 60,000 people watching, right? And that most of us that have had success, we're always trying to sort of inspire people and bring them along the ride. And that's really what your goal should be, is to not just have success and grab all you can, but also bring a lot of people with you. So what kind of things are you doing, whether in nonprofit work or in inspiring other musicians and sharing your stories so that they continue to truck along?
Well, yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, I mean, what I try to do as much as I can. Mostly I do, when it's like, for example, this morning, Randy asked me, Mike and Mike wanted me to do it, and I said, sure. Whenever I'm on the road and I have the opportunity to speak to students, because it's usually optional. When I work with an orchestra or something, it's usually, would you like to go into a school and talk to them? And I always say yes, I'd love to. And yeah, it's just, a lot of it is just kind of being, there's a lot now that I'm doing these videos. A lot of younger musicians will reach out and ask, what mic am I using, and and all those things. I like being able to engage with people about that. And I was always, when I started out, it's very, there was definitely two types of people that were in the business, that were, the established people that I would encounter. There were the people that were kind of open, and it's like, yeah, wanting to help me or offer advice. And then there was the other people that, were wanting to make sure I stayed down, and did not pose a threat to their, which doesn't make sense to me in a thing like music, because if somebody likes, it's not like people can only like one artist. So I never quite understood the whole, there's not enough for everyone idea. So yeah, I think it's just something that I'm always open to, and maybe, and I think it's only been in recent years that I'm even kind of qualified to really give the right kind of perspective and stuff to people, because now I've been doing it long enough where I kind of understand more about making it work in the long run. Because yeah, and it is true, sometimes people can, especially on the internet, start out and amass millions of views, hundreds of thousands of followers quickly, but the trick is sustaining and keeping it going, year after year. And anybody that does that, I have to give a lot of credit to. And just having success early can sometimes be a tougher thing when it inevitably gets tougher. So if you're, I know a peer of mine that had success very, very young. He sold like 200,000 albums by the time he was 17 years old. But when that kind of died down, he didn't know, he didn't have the foundation of grit that you need to keep it going, and basically hasn't had a career since then. So but as far as what I do to proactively share it, I say yes when people ask. That's all, pretty much.
And one of those things you've said yes to that's had a big impact is Band of Angels. And I think
Oh yeah,
Mike said you joined in on that 10 years ago, and
yes.
then back again this Saturday. And that's really been impactful on this community. The ability of Mike and the team to bring music into homes where kids might not otherwise have had that experience. And so I know that it's awesome that you've willingly been a part of helping Mike, spread that joy.
Yeah, well, Mike has such a great enthusiasm and passion for it, and it shows, and it's why it's become so successful. And and now it's a decade into it. I can imagine all the lives that it's already impacted, and I can only imagine how many people will be sitting in a similar type of situation that I am, that will credit Mike and Band of Angels for changing the course of their lives. So it's things like that really, that make me want to, when I do speak to students, or for example, do something for Band of Angels, it's that idea that part of what I'm doing could change the entire course of someone's life in a positive way. And that's certainly what Band of Angels has done and continues to do. And it feels good to be a part of something like that.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you Saturday night. It'll be a great show. I know that Mike and the team have worked hard to pull together, and so it'll be exciting to see you. And everybody on here should have the link. I've tried to get that out to all of the Lessons in Leadership group. If you don't have it, let me know. We'll make sure you've got it. You are invited to join in on that Saturday night at 7, and that will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, see you there.
Well, thanks, Tony. It's been great spending time with you.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise, Randy.
A lot of great insights here about life. Yeah, and musicians are storytellers, and you're a great storyteller. You've really turned this into a lot of lessons.
Thanks. Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I love being able to talk about this because I'm definitely curious. You know, if only we had more time to find out more about everyone who's on the call. Seems like a lot of interesting folks. So thank you for joining this morning, and hope to see you all. And when and I think I'm supposed to do the Kansas City Symphony at some point. I was on the books to do it, and then it got postponed. But I'll be there at some point.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to days of being able to go back to events and symphony and concerts,
Yeah.
ball games, and everything in person again.
Everything. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Have a great week. Hopefully we see all of you Saturday night.